Okay, this is chapter 4 for Computer Science 125. What you're going to learn on this chapter is how to create and format lines and borders on a web page, how to apply image element to add graphics to a web page. So we'll learn various graphic image file formats that we can use to display images on the page. We're going to optimize the image for web page display. We're going to see how to configure images as background on web pages. Now, one important thing when we configure a web page, an image for a background, you need to make sure the text is still readable. A lot of times I've seen students put images on the background and their text became totally unreadable. So that's one thing you need to be very careful with. We're going to configure images as hyperlinks so we can go to other pages or other images. Configure visual effects with CSS3, including multiple background images, rounded corners, box shadow, text shadow, opacity, and gradients. We're going to learn how to configure red, green, and blue, and A is the alpha channel. That's how transparent an image is. And then we're going to do hue, saturation, color with CSS3. We're going to use HTML5 elements to capture a figure. We're going to use HTML5 meter and progress elements. We're going to find some free and fee-based graphics resources, and then follow recommended web design guidelines for graphics on web pages. So let's get started. First one is to configure horizontal rule, and here we have the HTML command HR inside our familiar brackets, and notice here we get a horizontal rule on the page. Here we can use CSS to create border properties. So it consists of the border width, the border style, and the border color. So here we have an H2 element that we're defining. We're going to give it a border. We're going to give it a 2-pixel border. So this border here is 2 pixels wide on all sides. It's going to be solid. We'll learn the different types that we can use. And then it's going to be a red color because we have red, green, and blue. Notice red is full intensity red. So this is our border for our H2 heading element. The block display element. Default width of element content extends to the browser margin or specified width. Inline display element. The border closely outlines the element content. Here we have 2 elements, an H2 or an anchor reference. Notice both of them get borders because we define the border element. Here are the different types that you can use for telling what type you need to have on here. We have the default. Notice there's no border, none. Again, no border. We have double. Notice those look about the same on Firefox and Internet Explorer. Notice the groove here. The groove is a little bit lighter than over here in Internet Explorer. It looks almost the same, or actually a little bit darker than the double here. And it looks similar to the solid. Here we have solid, we got ridge, we got dashed. Notice the difference in the dashes. And we have dotted. Notice the difference in the corners on the dots for the dotted. Those are the various types that you can use. So where this solid was, you can use any one of those items that we saw earlier. And then we can configure one or more sides. We can just do the bottom, border left, border right, border top. So here we did a border bottom, 2 pixels, solid, and it's red. So we just get an underline on the page for that particular element. Now we can also add some padding, and padding is how much difference, how many pixels there are between the heading or whatever you're defining and the actual border itself. Here we have a 5-pixel border, so they'll have 5 pixels here. Here's with no pad. So notice how close it is here. Here we have 5 pixels. Notice how close it is here. There's 5 pixels there. Same thing with the drop down case, no border. Here we have 5 pixels. So you can also add the pattern on the bottom, left, right, and top, and you can do them different. So notice we have 5 here, 10 top, 10 bottom in this particular example. If we display 2 numeric values or percentages, the first value configures the top and bottom, so you don't have to configure all 4 of them. The second one configures the left and the right. So this gives a top of 20 and left and right of 10. So here's an example. Here we have the background color for our H2 heading, and that we're configuring these. Remember, these are our H2 heading that we had earlier. We have a bottom border, 2 pixels. It's going to be dashed, and the color is going to match the color of our text for the H2 heading. So this color of this text and this line are the same. And here's the second H2 heading that we use on that page. Now, some questions you need to answer. Is it reasonable? And you don't have to send this. This is just for your own check. Is it reasonable to try to code a web page that looks exactly the same on every browser and every platform? And I think that would be a good thing. You would like to have the same display across all browsers, even though you may not be able to get that. Look at this rule right here and find out what's wrong with it and why it won't display. Okay, and then you need to answer the question, can CSS be used to configure visual elements such as rectangular shapes and lines on a web page? Okay, you should answer these last 2 questions. So I'm going to pause here and we'll pick up back in the second one.